If your fraternity is predominantly white, that's okay. If it's predominantly black or Latin or Hispanic, it's perfectly okay. The pressure on fraternities to submit to the way universities are putting pressure for diversity, equity, and inclusion is a bit short-sighted. Why is that? Because fraternities can be made up of lots of different people who come from different backgrounds, different religions, different political views, and just because they're all the same race, which, by the way, doesn't even actually exist, we assume that they're not diverse. There's so many other ways to be diverse. And I'm telling you, as a black man, that you don't have to have a what we consider a racially diverse fraternity in order for it to be a great fraternity. In fact, the best way to have a fraternity that has all sorts of iterations of what it means to be human across race and class lines, etc., is to be a fraternity who invites and builds good men. That's it. If you're the kind of fraternity that is focused on making good men into great men, it will, by definition, be diverse, because greatness attracts greatness. Or one way that we say it in some parts of the country, game recognizes game. So if your fraternity is doing the right things, you will know that because guys from different backgrounds are going to be beating down the door to try to get in there. So if your reputation on campus is that you are a fraternity that's building extremely competent, outstanding, skilled men, diversity will follow. You don't need a diversity chair. And I know that pushes up against all of the DEI stuff. I know that your national offices are probably saying you got to get the more diverse, because all this fake pressure to cosmetically look like a Christmas tree. But let me tell you this. Here's a fact. Your fraternity can be made up of people from different races and still not be diverse. That is highly possible. If your fraternity is made up of a bunch of extremely wealthy people, but they're all wealthy Asians and whites and blacks and Hispanics, that's not diversity. That's homogeneity. And so we have this really silly reductionistic understanding of diversity that's limiting the fact that most fraternities are actually okay. Now listen, I know there's some frats, particularly some in the South, who are living in a different era and they don't want to be racially diverse, right? Well, let them die, because that will actually be unsustainable if you look at the birth rate data. So they'll just die off. But the rest of you who are really focused on building fraternity communities of great men without a diversity chair, if you just keep focusing on outstanding men and outcomes that produce them and programs that produce them, you are going to be racially and culturally diverse. Guys have way more in common across cultures and across races than people realize. And if we activate the normalcy of focusing on making men excellent, then diversity is something that's going to naturally come. So I just reject it outright that you need some sort of diversity chair. And so what a lot of predominantly white fraternities are doing is that they'll let one minority guy in and then he'll become the diversity chair, which is tokenism. And that's completely fake and cosmetic. And we know that's not real. Real diversity is when your fraternity naturally attracts talent, because talented people, regardless of their race, want to be around other talent. We see this with sports, right? We see it in the marketplace. We see it across, we see it in the military, right? Talent attracts talent, right? So the Navy SEALs don't need to have a diversity chair, because guys from all sorts of backgrounds want to try to be Navy SEALs. And if you're the kind of fraternity that has a reputation of being that outstanding and that dynamic, you're naturally going to have guys who are coming to you from all sorts of backgrounds and cultures and races. So don't buy into it. There may be pressure from the outside, I know you may have to signal, kind of virtue signal that you care about diversity. But there's so many ways to think about diversity outside of race, which, by the way, race does not exist. I'll do a separate video on that. So don't feel like you have to be pressured to submit to this cosmetic understanding of diversity. Focus on great men. Diversity will come. Just be heroic about it, right? Find men who want to use their power, presence, and creativity for the benefit of others, and you will have the most diverse fraternity on your campus.